All right, welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a while since our last webinar, but we're kicking off a 3-week run to close out 2020. Today's topic is the evolving definition of a healthy home. Maybe our presenter picked this topic because next week is National Hand Washing Awareness Week. What's more likely is that it is a topic that is on everyone's mind right now, and rightly so. You know, COVID has unveiled the ugly reality that viruses and other contaminants are transferable by air, bringing the concept of healthy homes to the forefront of our national dialogue. As consumer awareness increases, the definition of healthy homes is expanding into something entirely new. We'll take a look at how shifting consumer expectations, purchase preferences, and buying behaviors are placing new demands on building professionals and manufacturers alike. Here to lead us through this discussion is Sarah Gutterman. She is the co-founder and CEO of Green Builder Media. Sarah has established a reputation as a visionary thought leader and passionate advocate for sustainability, and she works closely with a diverse group of stakeholders in the building industry to develop impactful, long-term green strategies that are simultaneously sustainable and profitable. Sarah is a former venture capitalist and graduated cum laude from Dartmouth College and holds an MBA in entrepreneurship and finance from the University of Colorado. She is a go-getter who lives in Lake City, Colorado, where she is a county commissioner, as well as an avid long-distance runner, snowboarder, and CrossFit trainer. Today's webinar is brought to you by Panasonic. The Panasonic Indoor Air Quality Division is committed to delivering solutions for clean indoor air and healthy home building that make it easier for builders and installers to meet code and comply with stringent green building codes and standards. Panasonic provides and promotes trusted, sustainable solutions that create healthy and productive environments. With the power of Panasonic, you can build healthy, safe homes that guarantee customer satisfaction. During the course of today's presentation, you can submit questions for Sarah. Simply use the questions box inside the GoToWebinar control panel that's probably on the right side of your screen. I'll review those questions and pose them to her during the Q&A time set aside after her presentation. Hey, Sarah, happy December to you.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for that lovely intro, and thank you so much to everyone in attendance today. It is always a pleasure to be able to present to our Green Builder Media Network, our friends, our family, our colleagues, our audience, because you all are truly, indeed, our family, and that has become of paramount importance in these very strange times. And so I hope that you all are faring well and that you're staying healthy and safe. Healthy will be obviously the theme of our talk today. I see a lot of faces and names that I recognize. For those of you who are not familiar with Green Builder Media, let me just share a little bit of context with you. I'll also tell you about COGNITIONSmart data, which is our suite of market intelligence and data services that has built the foundation for the data that I'm going to present on today's webinar. So Green Builder Media, we are North America's leading media company focused on green building and sustainable living. We do a lot of neat things. We've been around for about 16 years, starting, of course, with our media and communications channels. We have a really robust spectrum of online, mobile, digital, social, and print media. If you want more from us beyond webinars, please feel free to subscribe to Green Builder Magazine, our flagship publication, or our Vantage weekly e-newsletter. But we have all kinds of content about really leading edge topics, things like sustainable living, how to make your homes healthy and safe and pandemic proof, topics like net zero and even clean mobility solutions. Water is a big area of focus for us right now as well. We also do demonstration projects. They're called our Vision House series. We try to showcase the most cutting edge products and systems and technologies and building science and design practices available in the market today. And we also do events, obviously right now virtual events, but when the world opens back up, we'll open back up our live events. And then last but not least, we have COGNITIONSmart data. As I mentioned, these are our market intelligence and data services. Cognition is really interesting, and I'll just, again, provide a little context. We've built a proprietary artificial intelligence-based technology platform that mines web and social media content using contextual filters and parameters that we have taught to the platform so that the data we get back is really relevant to the built environment, to sustainable living and sustainability in general. And it tracks topics like the ones I just mentioned, like net zero, healthy homes, water trends, outdoor living trends, et cetera. And then we can also look at things like purchase drivers and innovations that are transforming markets and factors that are driving growth in certain geographic markets. And we can look at millennial trends versus boomer trends. I'll share some of those today. But that is, as I said, the basis for a lot of the data that I'm going to present in our webinar today. Speaking of which, I do want to thank Panasonic for being our sponsor. They're a great partner, and the reason why this type of a webinar makes sense for them is they're really pioneering solutions in the healthy home space. I'll talk a little bit about those a little bit later on. As Mike said, these strange COVID times have really transformed the housing sector in a lot of ways. I'll talk a lot about housing market trends in the beginning of this webinar, but as much as anything else, COVID has really helped us all understand that our home is and really needs to be a sanctuary. We've come to realize the importance of having a healthy home, not just in terms of having good indoor air quality, but having a stress-free home. Having a home that can accommodate our needs, like working from home and schooling from home, or just having a place of peace. And so the definition of healthy home has really evolved over the course of the past year. Can you believe it? We're just coming up on a year of COVID. And something else that COVID has done, it has really expedited the adoption of a wide spectrum of products and technologies, everything from online shopping to enhanced digitization. In the housing sector, what that means is digitizing essential services like permits and inspections and appraisals, which frankly is going to result in a lot more efficiency in the building sector. But then it's also pushed the adoption of things like indoor air quality monitors and sensors, water management technologies, energy efficiency technologies as well. We'll talk some more about that. But again, as I mentioned, it's really expanded this concept of what a healthy home is, looking at lifestyle-enabled floor plans, responsible life choices, healthy cooking, things that weren't really on the radar before. And, I think that, ultimately, kind of a silver lining benefit of the pandemic is that, we realize, I think we've all come to realize that there are certain things, whether it is a global pandemic, and an airborne virus, whether it's things like wildfires in the western half of our country or superstorms and flooding in the eastern half, there are things that we simply cannot control. But there are also things that we can control, like keeping our homes healthy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I think it's important to start just with some general housing market data. For those of you who have seen some of my recent presentations, some of this information might be familiar to you, but I think it's important to start with context about why this interest in healthy homes is exploding right now beyond just the simple explanation of the pandemic, which of course is a major driver, but there are other factors as well. So fortunately, the housing market is the bright spot of the economy right now. Existing and new home sales are strong. Inventory is as tight as it has ever been. Prices are stable or even rising in many markets, and mortgage rates are just at historic lows. So home sales in 2020 have increased year over year by about 25 to 28%, depending on the month. In the third quarter, they were up about 26% year over year. As I mentioned, prices have really peaked this past year because of very tight inventory, with the median existing single-family home price reaching at about $317,000, which is a record high. Starts and permits are strong, And factors that are driving growth in the housing market include low interest rates, solid demand that is not shrinking at this point, and then, as I mentioned, that tight inventory. We are seeing some challenges to housing market growth, namely rising lumber prices, material shortages, particularly in categories like HVAC, for heating and cooling systems, the ventilation systems, as well as appliances, and then labor issues. Labor challenges have really plagued the building industry for the past many years, and they are particularly acute right now in the era of COVID. In terms of a general economic forecast, I think that we've seen that we're really going to see ebbs and flows until there's a vaccine, partly because of, kind of ebbing and flowing stay-at-home orders and other economic restrictions, but just because also other sectors beyond the housing market that aren't quite as lucky or growing as quickly, continue to suffer. With that said, again, back to the housing market, opportunity exists. There are consumers that have the savings and the financial wherewithal to invest in new homes or remodeling their existing homes. They want to take advantage of these historically low mortgage rates, and they want to change their living situation. I'll go into a lot more detail about that in a minute, but that's really kind of driven the uptick in the housing market. With that said, there are some more rigorous requirements with respect to mortgage underwriting standards, increased FICO score requirements, new thresholds for borrowers to meet. But we do anticipate that the housing market will continue to be strong into the first quarter and really the first half of 2021 because of some of the factors I've mentioned and we'll continue to talk about over the next couple of slides. And one really interesting dynamic, which I'll go into a lot more detail about, is that millennials and older Gen Zs, so this is the age range between mid-20s to just about 40, have for the first time seized the leadership position, the influencer position in the housing sector. So we'll talk more about their values. This is an age range, an age group, an audience segment that really makes decisions based on mission and purpose and values. And therefore, they're driving a new set of expectations in the housing market that are placing new demands on building professionals and manufacturers alike. So again, we'll go into more of that. Fortunately for the housing sector, the economics of owning a home is really penciling out right now. On a national scale, the median monthly cost for a rental is around $1,657. And if you look at the median monthly mortgage, it's about $300 less right now to own a home than to rent. So that, in conjunction with the long-term view right now that a lot of consumers and homeowners and home buyers are embracing, that they want to invest in an appreciating asset, is really driving those numbers in favor of homeownership. And interestingly, the highest home purchase rates are not in the expensive metro markets like they have been over the last many years, markets like Seattle, New York, LA, Dallas, Denver, but rather in secondary and tertiary and even rural markets. Markets that have a lower average home price per square foot, where homeowners can get a little bit more bang for their buck. Again, I'll go into a little bit more about what's driving that in a minute. And all of this is facilitated by the uptick in remote working and working from home. That's made a big impact on the types of choices that home buyers can make, because now they can live where they want to live and work where they live, as opposed to in the past, we've always had to make home buying decisions based on where we work, right? We live where we work. That's really flipped now. And so we're starting to see a lot of those remote and tertiary and even rural markets grow, whereas metro markets are actually shrinking. So that was the good news, that home ownership is penciling out. The bad news is, kind of the prevailing psychology right now in terms of spending remains cautious. Consumer confidence is still fairly low. People feel like they want to continue to ratchet back their expenses. They're holding tight to their pocketbooks, and they do believe that this pandemic and kind of the corresponding downturn in the economy is going to affect their lives for a long time. So they are feeling quite cautious with respect to spending. They have decreased spending on luxury and non-essential items, everything from recreation and travel and restaurants to kind of higher-end luxury and personal care products. But they have increased spending on things like groceries, remodeling their homes, home fitness, internet connectivity and bandwidth to accommodate remote working and schooling from home. We talk about digital natives with respect to millennials and Gen Zs. These are audience segments that kind of have grown up with the internet, but we're all kind of becoming digital natives right now because we're all shopping from line and we are kind of being forced to adopt advanced technologies. But again, like as I mentioned earlier with essential services in the housing sector, I think this is going to ultimately create a lot of efficiencies throughout our economy. I think that as we all continue to stay home and get a little bit more comfortable with what that looks like, we'll continue to see shifts and changes in the market, but as much as anything, shifts and changes in our priorities about how we live and where we live. So revisiting this kind of shifting market dynamic about where we are living, as I mentioned, large metro urban cores are down about 17% year over year with respect to home sales. Large metro suburbs are also down. Where we're starting to see a lot of growth, increasing growth, is in the smaller metro suburbs, and then, as I mentioned, rural areas, particularly around in the Mountain West. So markets like Boise, markets on the Western Slope in Colorado. We're seeing a lot of activity there. That was already trending before the pandemic and is continuing. That also creates a whole suite of new challenges because a lot of those communities are in what we call the wildland-urban interface, or the WUI, which means that there are a lot of wildfire risk mitigation issues and resiliency issues that we're going to have to address as people start moving into those markets in larger numbers. We are continuing to see a decrease in lot sizes, even though there's a slight, just very slight increase in the amount of square footage that consumers are looking for so that they can accommodate working and schooling from home. Another trend that we're seeing, which is really interesting in the COVID era, is an enhanced interest in outdoor living and connection with nature. So that's really created an uptick in the outdoor living market with respect to decking and yards and lawns and even gardening. It's a seller's market out there. In fact, in some markets, especially in some of those secondary and tertiary markets, we're hearing and we're tracking that there are competing offers. There's oftentimes overbidding for a lot of new and existing homes. Inventory is tight. So, the dynamics work in sellers' favors. With that said, we're also tracking that buyers are getting really creative, especially those millennials and Gen Zs. We're hearing from some of our builder friends that a lot of those millennials and Gen Zs are actually accessing some funding from their parents or grandparents for down payments. But what we're also seeing is that they're getting very creative. Maybe they're buying a property or a home and renting out part of it. They're pooling with friends to purchase homes. They're investing in properties that they can afford, so fixer-uppers rather than move-in ready homes, which is a little bit of a different trend than we've seen in the past handful of years. We're also seeing a rise in accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and prefab units that folks are buying for existing properties so that they can have a separate space for a home office or have a space for parents or children or guests to live on those properties. And then, as I mentioned, we're seeing a huge upsurge in outdoor living and really making more of those outdoor areas in addition to kind of retrofitting indoor areas to make sure that they work. We're absolutely seeing a reprioritization in terms of what homeowners really care about, what they want, and home buyers as well. As I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, home has become more than ever our sanctuary space, our place where we are safest, where we can have peace of mind, a space that we can control in this, kind of what seems a very out of control world. Part of the reason why folks are fleeing from these dense urban markets is, as I mentioned earlier, they can get a little bit more bang for their buck, but also because then they can also have a little bit more room to move. And especially if you look at those millennials and older Gen Zs who are spending more money in the home buying and home remodeling space than any other generation right now, many of them either have young families or are starting young families, and they want lawns and gardens and streets for their kids to ride bikes on. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic and certainly a reprioritization in the era of COVID. Something else that we're tracking, which I like to say, is that dated is the new black, right? So home buyers today aren't turning up their noses at listings that need some love and care and upgrading, some fixer-uppers. And again, this is a little bit different than over the last many years when home buyers were looking for move-in ready homes. So retro has become cool, and what that's done is really driven a huge uptake in the DIY or do-it-yourself space. And then another really interesting dynamic, again, is kind of this interest in a long-term investment. Now, we're seeing this not only in terms of consumers saying, okay, if I'm going to spend money right now, I want it to be in that appreciating asset that I mentioned earlier, but also that goes for investing in homes with respect to things like health and wellness and energy efficiency, things that will ultimately reduce the cost of home ownership. So home buyers right now are less focused on the lowest price per square foot. That metric is really shifting, and we're seeing homeowners being more willing than ever to invest in energy efficiency, water conservation, health and wellness, resiliency, some of these topics that I've mentioned. So frankly, Green Builder Media, we've been advocating to move away from the price per square foot metric since our inception 16 years ago, because it is an outdated, antiquated metric. It does not take into consideration quality and sustainability and performance and your family's health and our urgent water issues. And so we have always advocated that we transform that metric into something that is more holistic, more comprehensive, and more appropriate. And fortunately, we're seeing a pretty drastic movement in that direction now. So with that comes shifting consumer expectations. Health and wellness is the top of that list with respect to indoor air quality. We'll talk a lot more about ventilation, source control, contaminants. We're also tracking antimicrobial surfaces and finishes, touchless faucets, bidets, locks, sinks, things like that. There's a big uptick in interest in those elements. Connected living, of course, increased bandwidth and connectivity technologies, but that also translates into home health care and telemedicine, huge spikes in that area, as well as home fitness. And then monitoring, whether that's energy efficiency, water, indoor air quality. We're also seeing a huge surge in interest in resiliency and self-sufficiency in two areas. First is on-site power production, mostly solar and storage. And the second is food production on-site. So that's gardens and growing food outdoors. And then in some urban areas, we're seeing some homeowners, especially in multifamily situations or high-rise situations, bringing the outside inside and doing living walls or just growing food in pots and you know, even in innovative appliances that are available now to grow food inside. And then, as I mentioned, changes in design with respect to things like sanctuary and flex spaces, as well as that enhanced interest in the connection with nature. I mentioned that the DIY market is surging. DIY projects are up 75% this year. The average price point for DIY projects has increased slightly to about $12,500. Some of these are traditional DIY projects like lawn and gardens and painting, but some of these projects have translated into more complex projects like HVAC systems, plumbing, electrical work. Again, we're seeing that millennials and older Gen Zs are really driving the DIY space, just like the home buying space as well. So speaking of millennials and Gen Zs, let me talk a little bit about them. And it's important within the context of healthy homes because to many millennials and Gen Zs, good indoor air quality is just a fundamental homeowner right based on their set of values. So in terms of housing market influencers, you know, obviously millennials and Gen Zs are kind of top of the list that we're tracking. We're not counting out the boomers just because of their sheer numbers, and really because they too are very interested in keeping their homes healthy and efficient, especially as many of them, you know, are retiring or have retired and are working on fixed incomes. They want to keep their monthly utility bills low. But as much as anything else, and this is kind of a Captain Obvious element, they want to stay in their homes. You know, maybe some of them are downsizing or shifting to ADUs or prefabs as opposed to larger homes that they've owned, you know, where they've raised kids, but they don't want to go into assisted living facilities. And I think COVID has all put the fear of God into us with respect to the concept of those facilities. So boomers will continue to be an important market segment as well. Interestingly, it's the Gen Xers, my generation, that are the most on the sideline right now, partly because of the fact that Gen Xers were the hardest hit in the last recession, in the 2008 recession, and our credit, well, Gen Xers in general, credit hadn't recovered from getting underwater in that recession. So Gen Xers have historically been really important with respect to home buying and especially home remodeling. We're mostly on the sidelines right now. It's the millennials and the boomers that are driving trends. You know, millennials have this hunger for financial independence. They're about 40% of all home buyers, and they're just starting to hit their peak home buying potential. So these numbers are going to continue to surge. They're taking advantage of sub 3% mortgage rates, a lot of incentives, federal incentives for buying new homes or even upgrading homes, and there are a lot of affordable loan options for this age group right now. The majority of these millennial and older Gen Z buyers are couples, dual income, college educated, that either are starting families or have young families. They are looking for compact floor plans, efficient spaces, low monthly payments, and they want smart, efficient, healthy, sustainable. They really love renewables. In fact, in our research through Cognition shows that if their home can net meter, meaning they have solar, they're producing more energy than they're using, and they can feed that back to the grid, which is called net metering, that's a badge of honor. That's like cocktail party bragging rights, or at this point, Zoom bragging rights. So, you know, renewables is a big topic. Of course, connected living or smart home technologies is just a baseline expectation. And then again, healthy home, indoor air quality. This is a must-have to these savvy millennial buyers. I mentioned boomers, again, their sheer numbers, the fact that they are the most affluent generation. They have the ability to retrofit their homes, and that the numbers pencil out for this audience segment to invest in what we call assisted living technologies that can keep them in their homes for longer. That's a lot more cost effective than moving them into an assisted living facility. So we're seeing that boomers themselves or boomers assisted by their children are investing in these assisted living technologies like motion sensors, cameras, proactive devices that can send alerts to their healthcare professionals or to their children and grandchildren, are really helping to facilitate these folks staying at home. The other thing about boomers that we're tracking is that the boomer, kind of the new active adult is very different. I'll use my folks as an example. They're late 70s. My dad is going full steam ahead in terms of, his work schedule. My mom is trying to retire, but psychologically she just can't quite get herself to do that because she's too active and too intelligent, and this is very indicative of this new active adult. And they're staying in their homes, they're staying active, they're starting, second or third careers. They're remarrying, they're starting new hobbies, and so they'll continue to be a driving force in the housing sector. I don't want to count them out, certainly, even though, again, we have placed a lot of our focus on millennials. So finally, about a half hour into my preamble, let's get to some of these healthy home trends. These are some talking points that I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar in terms of the fact that we understand now too acutely that viruses and other contaminants are transferable by air or by surfaces, maybe not COVID, but other types of contaminants. And, we're more aware than ever of kind of the transfer of toxins and contaminants and viruses from one human being to another, whether it is through a surface or the air. And I think that, that has opened up this kind of quantum leap moment and opportunity to start really looking critically at how we design and build and specify products for our homes in a way that that are going to enable us to pandemic-proof our homes, to eliminate toxins, to reduce those contaminants that we have in our homes through that initial product specification or that we bring into our homes through things like cleaning products or even wearing our shoes inside. And all of this has expanded our definition of what a healthy home means. To some, it really does focus on indoor air quality, but to others, it really focuses on having those lifestyle-enabled floor plans that can accommodate this shift in how and where we work and school and these flex spaces. To many others, it has to do with healthy cooking and making more responsible life choices. I know I've kind of talked many of my friends through what it looks like to work out from home, to not have to go to a gym. How do you set yourself up for that? Not just in terms of the equipment, but psychologically, because that's a big shift. And I think in general, this time has pushed us not only towards understanding what those IAQ, indoor air quality related products and systems and technologies are, but how we can be more holistic in our approach to having a healthy home. And our good friend Sam Rashkin, chief architect of the EPA and one of the fathers of the Energy Star program, points out that we spend $40 billion a year on organic food and $20 billion a year on bottled water, yet we ingest 7 times more air than food and water each day. And that is a DOE statistic. And so why aren't we spending the right amount on those products and systems and technologies to facilitate the health and wellness of our homes? As we look at what that expanding definition of healthy home looks like, I've mentioned already the fact that stress relief, that having a home that is indeed a sanctuary, that can accommodate work-life balance and can give us access to the things we need to really thrive physically and psychologically. That has really kind of shifted and is now on the forefront of our national dialogue. We are seeing a lot of homeowners looking at flex spaces, areas where they might be able to take a Zoom call that won't impact, a larger family space. We're seeing a lot more cleaning and sanitation of homes to make sure that surfaces are, kind of cleansed of contaminants, antimicrobial surfaces, touchless environments, I mentioned that. Along with kind of flex spaces and telecommunications related elements, we're seeing a big surge also in ergonomic office setups. That has to do with furniture, also things like lighting, things like circadian lighting, which is lighting that changes with the time of the day as well as with the season of the year. So the quality and the color of the light will be different in the morning with the bright morning sun versus in the evening. And it matches our biorhythms better with the daytime and seasons. And then we're also seeing a lot more adoption of smart home technology so that there can be these central command and control centers so that folks can control their entire home. And then, of course, as I mentioned, just kind of the shift in the direction of making better lifestyle choices, enhancing healthy habits and diets and exercise regimes, et cetera. And then, of course, the concept of healthy home is translating into different types of design choices. We're seeing more minimalist designs with lots of windows and fenestration that enable more kind of enhanced ventilation strategies, open spaces, minimal decoration, and lack of clutter, and then lots of terraces, balconies, rooftop top gardens, et cetera, to really facilitate that enhanced connection with nature. As we track healthy home trends and online conversation, the online conversation about healthy homes has exploded at the beginning of this year and has just really stayed strong. It's all over the country. There's lots of dialogue on Twitter and other social media outlets, but of course lots of news stories and customer reviews and things like that. Everybody's talking about it. Healthy home skews a little bit more female, but it's all age ranges. If we look at related interests, people that are talking about healthy homes are also talking about family. Politics, I guess everybody's talking about politics this year. Food and drink, entertainment, green living, et cetera. As we look at trending indoor air quality topics, one of the most explosive ones is non-toxic, right? People are trying to figure out how to specify and select products like paint and flooring as they are remodeling their homes that are non-toxic, that don't off-gas or have volatile organic compounds or VOCs. The other surging IAQ topic that we're tracking is real-time indoor air quality systems that track indoor air quality in real time and either have a monitor or send alerts to homeowners. And generally, these systems track things like temperature, humidity, VOC, CO2, dust, et cetera. And so what we've seen over the course of the past year is a marked increase in not just interest, but in the investment in proactive indoor air quality systems that start with the monitoring and the sensing in real time that I just mentioned, but then they actually connect to things like range hoods and vent fans and mechanical systems, HVAC systems, so that if toxins and contaminants are sensed in the air, it's not just that an alert is sent to a homeowner, but that system proactively turns on those different elements to facilitate fresh air exchange, ventilation, air purification, through those devices and mechanical systems. And since Panasonic is our sponsor, I'll give a shout out to them. Panasonic has an excellent example of this kind of a system called Cosmos, like the cosmos, and it connects Fubot IAQ monitors with Panasonic vent fans and range hoods. And ultimately, I know the plans are to connect with other mechanical systems to, again, proactively make sure that indoor air quality is good and not just monitored, but addressed within homes. We're also seeing a lot of interest in, beyond those kind of demand-controlled ventilation systems and the sensors, to looking at kind of space and zone sensing so that you can kind of clean air in specific zones through HVAC and mechanical systems, for example, in kitchens and bedrooms, where there may be more CO2 certainly emitted in the bedrooms during the night, or VOCs emitted in kitchens while cooking. We've also seen an uptick in making sure that heating and cooling filters and ducts are clean and addressing things like airflow deficiencies. Moving into some of our cognition survey data, we have an ongoing survey. It's not even closed yet, but I just pulled some of the results as of yesterday. And as we surveyed our audience, and this is both trades, building professionals, and consumers, we asked them which category, housing-related category, will be most impacted by the coronavirus. And you can see indoor air quality and healthy home is by far kind of the top area that our audience feels will be impacted, followed by remote working, and then home health care and telemedicine. I will tell you that as time goes on, the indoor air quality and healthy home line keeps going up, and clearly, this is going to be the kind of most impacted segment, kind of out of all the ones that we're surveying for. What I will say is that there was a growing interest in indoor air quality and healthy homes even before the pandemic, but as I mentioned earlier, COVID has really kind of created this quantum leap moment. I equate it to what happened in the 2008 recession with respect to energy efficiency. In some ways, that recession was the best thing that could have happened to energy efficiency, because all of a sudden people became super cognizant of their energy bills. And so awareness about energy efficiency products and systems and technologies and building science and high performance systems spiked. And we never went backwards from there. And I think that's happening right now with respect to healthy homes and indoor air quality because of COVID. You can see we also asked how consumer interest has changed in the following categories due to coronavirus, and remote working, home health care, telemedicine, and health and indoor air quality are kind of those top three with respect to increasing substantially or moderately. We asked how our audience is changing their own behavior because of the coronavirus, cooking from home, working from home, aware of indoor air quality in their homes, cleaning their homes more regularly, spending more time outdoors, exercising more. These are all top of the list. Specifically with respect to indoor air quality, again, part of our survey, we've seen that about 85% of home buyers say that they will pay more for healthy homes, and about 92% of our audience now say that indoor air quality is extremely important or very important, and that number continues to tick up. In fact, just a couple of months ago, it was at 90%, and now it's up to 92%. Indoor air quality has really shifted from a nice-to-have to a must-have. I've mentioned, that it's a baseline requirement for certain audience segments right now. And interestingly, also as a part of our survey, we ask our readers, our consumer audience, kind of where IAQ and healthy home is with respect to priorities for home buying decisions. And they are now telling us that having a healthy home is as important as location. That's never happened before. That is new. And that's really important if you're a builder or a building professional or a consumer, a home buyer. to really understand that dynamic. As we track healthy home and IAQ-related conversation, it is a discussion online that people are very passionate about. They use strong language, both positive and negative, and it's a very emotional and personal topic area. Folks get really angry when they talk about bad indoor air quality, or if they find that their home is unhealthy or impacting their family's health, and they display very positive emotions when talking about a healthy home. We do see some differences in terms of how different audience segments are talking about indoor air quality. Females tend to be more focused on health impacts for their families and their children. Males are kind of more focused on general indoor air quality and how it relates to climate change. There's more of a connection with climate change for males. And then, of course, adults over 45 are thinking a little bit more about, kind of impact on older adults. One other thing that has recently changed in our surveys, on the bottom right of this slide, when we ask our consumer audience, our homeowner audience, what they use to improve their indoor air quality in their homes, they used to say that non-toxic materials and finishes was the #1 thing that they use, but just fairly recently, over the past couple of months, ventilation and fresh air exchange systems has eclipsed non-toxic materials as the #1 thing that they're deploying within their homes to improve indoor air quality. Also, as a part of our surveys, we see that homeowners believe that indoor air quality and having a healthy home is the #1 thing that they equate with having a sustainable home. So it's not only forefront in terms of priorities, but it's really important with respect to kind of having consumers feel like they do have a sustainable home. When we look at those proactive whole home indoor air quality systems that are kind of in most demand, as I mentioned, these have monitoring systems that hook into ERVs and mechanical systems. They can be controlled by a central hub that integrates with a larger smart home system. They have proactive information and diagnostics and software that can be upgraded remotely. And they can also learn a homeowner's behavior and then act accordingly to optimize whether it's HVAC performance or cost effectiveness. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Kind of moving through some more of our consumer survey information. Consumers, and this kind of goes without saying, they're definitely connecting health and home now more than ever. They are more concerned about IAQ as we move into the colder months than they were in the summer, because they can't just pop the windows open for fresh air exchange. There is a dramatic difference between the owners of green homes and how confident they are in the indoor air quality and the health of their homes versus those who don't have green homes. It's just a dramatic difference. And the other thing I want to point out is when we survey our builder audience, our builders are telling us that about 25%, 24, 25% of the time, their home buyers are willing to invest in, they are investing in, not just willing, but they are investing in indoor air quality systems. And 42% say sometimes. Now, you might say, 24%, that's not that much, but keep in mind that a couple of years ago, that number was 0. So 0 to 24 in just a couple of years is, pretty dramatic market growth. And all of those numbers keep shifting to the left. As we talk with our high-performance builder friends and colleagues, those folks in our network, interestingly, a lot of them are actually changing their own messaging from promoting themselves as high-performance builders to healthy home builders, where high performance is an essential part of healthy home, but it's only a piece of it. And they're saying that they are absolutely, seeing a flood of interest in healthy homes and indoor air quality. They're doing a couple of things to work with their home buyers to understand, kind of IAQ, the situational awareness, conducting an IAQ assessment, understanding health risks with respect to each family's unique situation. They are installing those IAQ sensors that offer the real-time data and connect with other products and systems. They're also teaching homeowners how to mitigate IAQ risk once they move into a home by, doing things like specifying healthy, non-toxic, low VOC materials, paints, furnitures, cleaning products, making sure they have proper ventilation, clean filters. Filter maintenance is a big area of focus for a lot of our builders to help their home buyers understand how to maintain good indoor air quality, and then facilitating that fresh air exchange properly, keeping surfaces clean, reducing risk of mold and water damage, keeping homes pest-proof, et cetera. And then to really understand, again, each family's specific needs. Some families that might have children or parents with allergies might have more rigorous IAQ requirements than others. Ventilation is a really big area of indoor air quality. And I just wanted to show this graph. Look at the numbers of millennials and Gen Zs that are talking about ventilation and fresh air exchange. I always smile when I see this one because I'm like, wow, apparently ventilation is cool. It's not just insulation that's cool. But with that said, there's really been a shift and an evolution in the definition of ventilation. So, and that's partly driven by the pandemic, but also a big driver for increase in awareness of ventilation is wildfires. As these wildfires rage throughout the western U.S., in places like California and Colorado, where I'm in Colorado, we saw our state's first, second, and third largest wildfires just this season alone. 2 of them converged into a megafire. Same with California, just an absolutely tragic and historic wildfire season there. And those wildfires occurred during really hot periods of times when temperatures were really high. And so homeowners were really challenged because they either had to really crank up their HVAC, their AC systems, and kind of overwork their mechanical systems, or, they had to do that, but it really wasn't an either or because they couldn't open the windows. It was too hot and too smoky. And so that kind of changes the way, it kind of evolves the way that heating and cooling or HVAC systems have to work in our homes as well, to really make sure that we are safe and protected, not just properly heated or cooled. And so, we are seeing this shift in ventilation and what that means. Historically, there's been, kind of the filtration market has been dominated by HEPA filters. We're seeing, increase in MERV filters, but we're also seeing some new types of filtration and ventilation systems like activated carbon filters that strip ozone out of the air that are growing in adoption, electrostatic precipitators and ionic filters that are able to purify and filter different types of toxins and contaminants, ozone-based purifiers. We're seeing some UVC light, both spot and whole home systems, again, that can really address things like bacteria and viruses. Some of the traditional HVAC companies like Trane and Carrier are coming out with whole home ventilation and filtration systems. In fact, I just saw a release by Carrier that says that they just came out with a whole home ventilation system that can kill up to 99% of COVID particles in the air. Radon monitoring is also on the rise. And, right now I'm kind of using ventilation and air purification interchangeably, but in the building industry, we always have said, that the V is the missing link in HVAC, so heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Historically, kind of building scientists have said, well, builders have kind of ignored the ventilation piece and really just focused on heating and cooling. Now, not only are we seeing, a bigger demand for ventilation, but again, kind of ventilation, the whole definition is changing, and purification is actually becoming, kind of as important or as talked about as ventilation, so that we can not just ventilate, meaning fresh air exchange, but then purify and filter toxins out of the air, so that we can pandemic-proof our homes. One kind of word of warning is what we're seeing is that consumers kind of want that easy button. They want easy, fast, and cost-effective solutions. But there are a lot of claims out there that aren't necessarily justified by science and data. Some of those include bath fans that have UV light that say they can purify an entire bathroom, but in the reality, the light only reaches 2 to 3 feet below the fan itself, which, if you think about where a lot of the toxins and germs are in a bathroom, it's much further down than 2 to 3 feet beyond that vent fan. So buyer beware a little bit there in terms of some of the claims. Make sure, that you're really researching the data. I have a few facts in terms of what builders are most focused on. They're looking at certainly, at the surge in awareness of ventilation in healthy homes. They are seeing an increased demand for whole home fresh air systems over spot systems, which might just be, kind of a standalone air purifier, so systems that integrate into heating and cooling systems. They too are seeing this huge surge in interest in those proactive IAQ systems. They're a little worried about making sure that these systems have proper installation. They're worried about lack of homeowner maintenance, because if homeowners are not maintaining filters and equipment properly, not only does that mean you're not getting the full benefit of air ventilation, filtration, and purification, but it means that it could lead to kind of only achieving a fraction of targeted performance rates with respect to both, again, kind of the IAQ element as well as the energy performance element. So, if you are a homeowner on this webinar, make sure you're asking your contractors or your builders the right questions about proper installation, about, proper maintenance, and really understanding not just the performance of those systems, but what are the air exchange codes and regulations? Are your builders meeting those? That was something that a lot of our building scientist friends pointed out, that they're worried that right now, as indoor air quality related codes and regulations start ratcheting up, the builders might not have the right building science related knowledge to address those codes and the building science and performance pieces appropriately. I know I'm kind of running out of time here, so let me just go through these last couple of slides fairly quickly. I think we've talked about system installation and maintenance. When we ask our builders, what the best way is to pandemic-proof a home, they suggest natural ventilation, as in opening your windows as often as possible. But if not, making sure, that you meet ASHRAE requirements, and creating a specific room to kind of put anyone who falls ill into that has negative pressure, so that the air from that space is exhausted out of the home, as opposed to mixing with the air that goes into the rest of the home. Some fun disruptive innovations that we're tracking that we're going to start seeing more and more of, I think. First are wearables. So we're seeing some purification technology that looks like a headset that covers a wearer's mouth and that contains filters. So it's really spot filtration and purification between the air and the wearer's mouth. We're seeing plants that are being incorporated into filtration systems because they can filter out different size particles than a standard filter like a HEPA filter. We're seeing some fun applications of filtration integrated into kind of art. So we're looking at filtration systems that become more artistic and aesthetically pleasing, and then dual purpose products. So we've seen some lamps that are also air filters, or different kind of decorations and decor that can also be spot air purifiers. We're also watching some advancements in different types of filtration and purification technologies. There's some interesting wool-based purification technologies and nanofibers. There's some researchers in Singapore that are looking at nanofibers that can remove, vast majority of small particles that would, pass through more conventional filters, but that also allow for airflow, which are really innovative. And then we're just seeing a lot of these filtration and ventilation and purification technologies become smarter and more integrated. And then, as I mentioned, some interesting UVC light applications. Again, some of these I think have some false claims, particularly around UVC light, but there are some really great ones that are starting to be installed inside ducts or HVAC systems that really provide for comprehensive solutions. Things, other trends to watch, just kind of more powerful purification and filtration systems that kind of cycle air through and filter faster, more regularly. There's a company called Pure 365 that has a technology called Super V. I'm trying to get this installed in my parents' home just to give you a sense of how important I think, these technologies are. Just an expanded suite of whole home applications and systems that address not just a broader spectrum of IAQ issues, but also different types of particles. Let's see. We are going to see, again, ratcheted codes across the country that address indoor air quality. So, if you're a builder or building professional or manufacturer, make sure you understand the changes in the 2021 codes with respect. Right now, it's, has to do with things like vent fans, single family and IAQ applications and range hoods. But we're seeing a lot of progress, especially in areas, states like California, of course, which is a harbinger for, most innovation with respect to sustainability. We're seeing a lot of progress in codes and regulations and standards that we think will spread across the country. So just last couple of slides here. We've certainly seen that homeowners, have really shifted their perspective with respect to their homes. I think that home, again, it's a sanctuary. We understand that it's essential to having, a certain quality of life and peace of mind and stability. And I think that homeowners are becoming more savvy with respect to healthy homes. And so that means that there's huge opportunity right now for building professionals, for manufacturers, et cetera, to really take advantage and implement innovation. One thing that's been pointed out to us is that, there isn't a lot of kind of labels right now. There's EPA's Indoor Air Plus program, but I think we're going to see an increase in IAQ-related kind of certifications and labels moving forward so that a lot of the claims out there can be substantiated. But when it comes to healthy homes, it's actually pretty simple. First, make sure you are controlling the toxins as you design and as you build a home. Next, once an occupant moves in, make sure that they are ventilating and purifying and filtering properly. And last, make sure they're not bringing toxins into the home, again, through products or furniture or cleaning products, things like that. It's a lot easier to be proactive either up front or once you're in a home in terms of just keeping that space clean as opposed to trying to clean up and mitigate after you've brought in toxins or VOCs or all of that. So, an ounce of prevention in this case is certainly, worth a pound of cure. And, healthy homes matter. They can keep us and our families healthy and safe. Having proper maintenance of our IAQ and mechanical systems will actually prolong our energy performance, decrease our monthly utility bills, and just optimize the performance of our homes. So make sure that if you are a homeowner or if you're a builder, that you're teaching your homeowners to maintain their systems properly, once, of course, they are installed properly. And then make sure that you do keep your eye on codes. and programs. Codes, again, look for in the next several code cycles, and granted the next code cycle won't be till 2024, but look for enhanced and ratcheted IAQ codes. They're coming. And then finally, if you have any questions about indoor air quality kind of programs, EPA does have a good Indoor Air Quality Plus program. It is evolving. They're actually just about to launch a version 2 of that program. The current program, though, has a checklist with easy steps to improve IAQ and actually a methodology for verification. It's not that expensive to outfit your home with certain IAQ upgrades, and especially those monitors and sensors. So, it's certainly something that is feasible and reachable. So that's it. I went over time, but I am absolutely available for the next, while for any questions. Mike, I'll kick it over to you, but we have a ton of information about healthy homes, sustainable living, how the market is shifting because of COVID on greenbuildermedia.com. Be sure to visit the COGNITION page. We have tons of market research and data on there at greenbuildermedia.com/cognition, and then feel free to email me or shoot me a text. I don't always pick up my phone, so email or text are probably the best way to contact me if you have any questions. So Mike, I'll kick it back over to you if we have any questions from the audience.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. We do. We got a number of questions, actually. We're going to jump right into those. We're going to start with one from Alex Walter out of Colorado. What, if anything, is prompting boomers and Gen Zers to pay attention to indoor air quality? I'm presuming a lot of this is COVID-based, but given that there's an identification of just those two categories and the omission of Gen X, either Gen Xers like us don't care, or maybe there's something different that you're seeing in the data.
Sure. So first of all, everyone is interested in indoor air quality, even the Gen Xers, even though we are a little bit more on the sidelines, as I mentioned, in terms of home buying and remodeling, mostly for financial reasons. But, kind of every audience segment, interest has been increasing in IAQ and in healthy homes for the past several years, even before the pandemic. But the pandemic has really expedited that interest in healthy homes because, as I said a couple of times, of that realization that this virus is transmittable or transferable via the air. It's airborne. And for a period of time, the CDC wasn't sure how transferable it was on surfaces, but I think that bumped up homeowners' awareness about cleaning surfaces. And I think that, just that kind of shift in understanding about the fact that, viruses and toxins can be transferred in the air and surfaces, really kind of opened the door to this exponential interest in healthy homes. But as I said earlier, I don't think it's just the pandemic. I think there was already this growing awareness that, bad indoor air quality because of mold and because of toxins and VOCs and, CO2s and even, kind of humidity, which then leads to mold, how all of that could impact the health of an occupant or, children in particular. There was already a tremendous amount of kind of awareness or growing amount of awareness that poor indoor air quality can directly lead to ailments like ADD and asthma. So there was already that growing awareness, but the pandemic again was really kind of a kicker, so to speak, or a facilitator of interest in the segment, in combination with the wildfires. I don't think that we can discount the fact that when we have bad outdoor air quality, that obviously translates into bad indoor air quality. So I think, kind of this kind of ugly combination of COVID and wildfires really set off, and triggered a tremendous surge in interest in making sure homes are healthy and that indoor air quality is good.
All right, Maria had a question. She wanted to know, wouldn't it be more cost effective to purchase a new home with all the health and wellness elements versus an older home needing a significant amount of renovations to incorporate those health and wellness elements?
It's a great question, and I'm not trying to be opaque in my answer, but the real answer is it depends. It depends on the market. It depends on, kind of what level of housing you are looking at. It depends on what you can afford in that moment in time. If you can afford a new house that's all decked out with healthy home and IAQ and connected living and energy efficiency products and systems and technologies, and it's in a market that you want to live in, then absolutely, I think it's a great investment. If you can't find one right now because inventory is so limited, or if you can't afford one, I think that there are some very low-hanging fruit steps that can be taken to improve the indoor air quality of an existing home. I will say that generally speaking, the older the home, the more IAQ problems there tend to be with respect to everything from, if we're going way back, we're looking at asbestos issues, we're looking at formaldehyde issues, or just dated, products like carpets that would, need to be replaced. And so, but with that said, if you're looking at, a home that's been built in the last maybe 20 years and has addressed some of these healthy home and IAQ issues, and you just need to make some upgrades. And, you can get into the home as an investment and upgrade some things right up front, and then others over time that might be a better, investment for you. So, I hate to be opaque. I think ideally, yes, it'd be great if everyone could, just on a, kind of a snap of our fingers, either move into a new home that's all decked out or upgrade our existing homes. I think that honestly, our existing built environment, and specifically our existing housing stock, is the elephant in the room with respect to reaching sustainability goals across the board, whether that has to do with energy performance or health and wellness, or addressing our urgent water needs, because water is one of the biggest topics and challenges of our moment. We have to address our existing housing stock and our existing built environment and upgrade these spaces so that they are healthy and they are performing in an optimized way. But, it will take some time, and it certainly will take some investment.
All right, we've got a number of product-specific questions to get to. The first one is something like, how can bathroom or ventilation fans like Panasonic's, sponsor of this webinar, help during the pandemic?
Yes, so great question. Because through proper ventilation and air purification and filtration, not only can we remove toxins like COVID particles from the air and exhaust those into, the outside environment, the outdoor air. We can bring in fresh air, and we can make sure that any air that is recycled is, again, purified and filtered and healthy, and does not have toxins or viruses or other contaminants. So, by having the proper ventilation, filtration, and purification technologies in your home, you can really address COVID concerns, remove virus particles, and make sure you have a healthy home. So, that means, again, making sure you're running your vent fans to get that fresh air exchange. If you have range hoods, those, can help certainly with COVID, but they also, you should be running your range hoods as you're cooking to remove VOCs. I don't know that people realize how many VOCs are actually emitted when you're cooking. We've done some tests where, for example, I think pepperoni pizza is one of the worst emitters, one of the worst offenders. Next time you cook I don't know if you eat pepperoni or cheese or pizza, but if you do, if you ever get an indoor air quality monitor, which I highly recommend, by the way, put it by your oven as you're cooking a pepperoni pizza, and you'll see that thing spike. So making sure we're running our ventilation systems, again, whether it's a bath fan, a range hood, our HVAC systems, the ventilation elements of our HVAC systems, or hopefully, ideally, the whole integrated system, the whole kit and caboodle, with something like a Super V technology that can hook into your HVAC system by Pure 365, which is simply just a technology that we've recently found out about, but we really believe in. Having those things will absolutely help ensure that you have good indoor air quality and that you're maintaining the health of your home.
We had a question from our friend Margaret in Colorado. She wanted to know if the Panasonic Cosmos, which you mentioned earlier, does that incorporate newer like evaporative coolers, like a breeze air? Because she's thinking about things like indoor air quality and dust. And then she had a follow-up question, which was, has the air changes per hour changed? And I'm assuming she's talking about in regards to the products themselves, not so much the code, but has the ACH changed to respond to this increased interest in indoor air quality?
So let me answer the first question first, which is evaporative cooling in systems like Panasonic's Cosmos. The real answer is I actually don't know if Cosmos incorporates evaporative cooling. I don't think so, but I can certainly look into that if you want to shoot me an email and remind me. I can ask our friends at Panasonic. I know Brown has a similar system. I can just check and see what the options are out there. As far as I know, right now, today, during this webinar, I don't think that that's something that's incorporated into those systems, but please don't quote me on that until I confirm one way or the other. In terms of kind of the performance of these systems, yes, we are seeing that some of them are kind of solving for IAQ by doing things like kind of faster cycling and more regular cycling per minute. That is some of the advancement in the technologies that we are watching. Also, in addition to kind of cycling more often and at faster rates, we are seeing that they are trying to address a wider spectrum of contaminants and particles in the home. So, whereas they used to perhaps solve for, certain size particles or certain types of VOCs and CO2, they're now expanding into smaller particles, that are more virus size. So we're kind of seeing advancements on all those fronts.
Okay. Michael Ham had very nice things to say about your presentation, and but also had a question too. He says that ozone-producing purifiers are a lung irritant, and many homeowners don't understand it may help with one issue, but introduce another. So he wants to know if you are seeing from your data that increased consumer education could possibly expose false claims.
Michael, first of all, hello. Nice to, I guess, get a chat from you. But interesting that you asked that question, because only an IAQ expert like you would know to ask that kind of a question specifically about ozone. And you're absolutely right, whether it's an ozone filter or whether it's, I've mentioned, UVC. I've kind of picked on UVC and some of the false claims around that technology. You're right. As we see, kind of an increase in adoption and applications of these technologies, we need to make sure that those are proper applications. So you're absolutely right. Ozone in particular, can help solve some certain issues, but they absolutely can create some other issues. And while I am not kind of a IAQ engineer, product specialist, to really be able to go into the weeds. In fact, you probably can more than I can, Michael. But yes, we need to make sure that, first of all, manufacturers need to make sure that any products that they are creating aren't then causing other problems. They also need to make sure that they're backing up their claims with data and science and research. And building professionals and homeowners alike need to make sure that they are demanding that data and that science and that research so that they can understand kind of the full spectrum of implications for different types of products and systems, because there are some that are very effective and benign. There are others that can be very effective solving for certain types of products, but they, as you're saying, can lead to other issues. And so it is important that we provide that level of education and information, and that, again, whether you're a builder or a contractor or a homeowner and you're buying these products or at least researching them, that you're asking the right questions to make sure that that you really understand kind of the full implications of, especially some of these kind of more emerging and advanced technologies that are just coming onto the market right now.
All right, we had a question from Cameron. How long do you expect it to take for control systems to become more user-friendly? He's claiming that HVAC controls continue to become more confounding each year.
Yes, another great question. I would say that, while some certainly are becoming more, to use your word, confounding and complex, I actually think that we are also seeing the flip side of that, where we're starting to see a lot of the smart home technology companies, so companies, whether it's Samsung SmartThings or Control4 that was acquired by Snap AV, or Brilliant, and a handful of others, actually trying to kind of make the integrated whole home controls less complex and move in the opposite direction, where maybe the complex HVAC control system hooks into that central smart home hub, and then the user interface is quite simple and user-friendly. I think that it's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's a little bit of a quandary, because on one hand, we want the advanced programming ability and, kind of technology of the more complex systems, but we also want the user interface that's super simple. We've become really used to and accustomed to the simple user interface through our smartphones and our iPads, and Apple and Samsung have streamlined user interfaces to just make it super easy, and everything just kind of a tap of our finger. But I do think that we're going to see a lot more advances in kind of the integration of those control systems. Something else that we're seeing that's really interesting is kind of this combination of some of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar with respect to labor challenges, soaring lumber prices, material shortages. These things are kind of creating this perfect storm to make alternative building systems and practices, so things like insulated concrete forms and structural insulated panels, prefab and panelized or off-site systems, desirable, cost-effective. Especially prefab and panelized wall systems, they can address things like those labor challenges and on-site waste, job site waste and construction schedules and quality control. That's a huge one. And with that, especially in the prefab space, we're seeing certain players, and I'll name one Actually, Green Builder Media, we're just about to launch a project with them called Devel. The prefab manufacturer is Devel, D-V-E-L-E. We're actually, spoiler alert, we're just about to launch a Green Builder branded Devel home, prefab home, a series of homes with some configurable floor plans. But we're starting to see prefab builders as well as traditional builders kind of integrating all of these complex controls into their new homes. Again, so that user interface becomes super easy and simple, but more importantly, so that the home itself can learn occupant behavior and optimize its own performance, whether that has to do with energy or indoor air quality or water. So I think that in the next handful of years, we're going to see a major transformation so that our homes and our built environment in general actually have that intelligence integrated into kind of spaces and systems, taking human error out of the entire equation. And that is actually, I think, where we get really exciting in terms of increasing the sustainability and the performance and the health and wellness of our built environment.
All right, we have another question from Alex. We got one from him earlier, but he wanted to know, what can and should we do to have home buyers and renters realize that portable air filters, cleaners, etc., really don't do much toward improving whole home air quality?
What should we do? It's just, it's all about kind of education. I think, clearly Green Builder Media, our mission, the reason why we are in business is to help, manufacturers and building professionals and consumers alike understand these topics and learn about these different areas. So I know, we're certainly on board to beat this drum as loudly as we can to make sure both building professionals and consumers know how to improve the health and wellness of homes. I think it's just really important that we remain consistent in our messaging. With that said, I think it's also important to understand that, some steps are better than no steps. And so if a homeowner maybe can't invest at that moment in time for financial reasons or, other reasons in a whole home solution, but they can invest in a spot solution, a, standalone, air filtration and purification, filtration and purification system that can sit in their kitchen or in their bedroom, that's better than nothing. And so I think we just need to make sure that we have a clear and consistent message about kind of what the degrees are of kind of performance and effectiveness with respect to indoor air quality and healthy home solutions. I think that it's important that we don't send a message that either you have a whole home solution or you're doomed and your kids are going to get sick and your family is out of luck, but rather, that we offer kind of steps that homeowners can take that are feasible, kind of with the understanding that, the ultimate and best solution is absolutely that whole home approach. And I think we also need to continue to message that to building professionals because it's, the builders, the architects, the designers, the engineers, the, raters, et cetera, that are going to push for making sure that we do have those whole home solutions designed into, sized appropriately, installed correctly, and performing, correctly within those new homes and retrofitted into existing homes.
Okay, we've got just a couple of questions left, Sarah. We had one from Lynn. Are you fielding concerns through the smart data with 5G EMFs?
That's a good question. We are tracking 5G. I can't say that we are necessarily tracking 5G EMF concerns. Again, if you want to shoot me an email, I'm happy to kind of check with our data team and follow up to see what they, if they've noticed anything. At this point, as I said, it's not really on my radar, but certainly happy to look into that one for you, Lynn.
Okay, and I wanted to take my opportunity as kind of the MC to ask you a question, Sarah, that was certainly pertinent to what we're doing here. We've talked in the past about the sustainability benefits of urban living. Having a lot more people in an area, it's just multifamily, high rises. But as you pointed out, buyers are looking to move away from urban centers. So can you share your thoughts on kind of the sustainability impact of this movement, and is it going to dampen the benefits that we are seeing from things like reduced travel and those associated emissions?
So, Mike, another great question. And, I think the real answer is, it kind of is yet to be seen what the impacts are. And I think that there are going to be, kind of improvements in certain areas, and then, maybe, kind of some maybe some increasing or, kind of lack of improvements in other areas. So, for example, if people are moving out to secondary and tertiary markets and rural areas, but they're working more from home, and so they're not commuting, even in that urban core, I think that is an improvement. If folks are reducing their travel, if they're focusing more on, kind of their local area, right? So if they can work from home, they don't have to commute. If they can find their services in their local area, whether those are healthcare services or personal services, groceries and cafes and things, that they kind of utilize and engage in their day-to-day lives in their kind of local area, then, it's kind of a wash in terms of living in an urban area to access a wider spectrum, let's say, of services and cafes and cultural elements. So it kind of depends on whether people are staying in their local areas or, if they are going to commute back and forth to larger urban areas. It seems to me that there will be a shift in general to more localized living. I think the biggest impact is, is the commute. I can tell you that in our surveys, in our cognition data tracking, just even in anecdotal conversations that I've had this year, I don't know anyone that is saying, God, I want to get back to commuting. God, I want to get back on that commuter train, or, sit 2 hours in traffic, on my way in and out of the office. And I know that's a little bit different from, kind of folks that live in that urban core. But, I think that we're going to see some trade-offs. We are going to see some shifts in priorities and lifestyles that are in place now that will continue after the pandemic. So it's a little bit of a wait and see in terms of, if people are moving out, to tertiary and secondary markets, will they then have to commute more regularly into urban markets? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think when we do our surveys, actually 75% of respondents tell us that they do not plan on going back into an office full time. The predominant answer is that maybe they'll go back 1 to 2 days a week. A large portion of folks say that they never want to go back to a central office again to work on a regular basis, maybe go in for special meetings. But I think the predominant feeling is that remote working is here to stay. Maybe there will be some co-working spaces, again, more on a localized and community basis so that people can actually get out of their homes into a different space. But I think we're really going to see a transformation in how and where we work that impacts, kind of the market, impacts kind of the business environment in the long term. I think what that also does is, it will make office spaces available. I think some of those office spaces will be retrofitted into, kind of warehouses and delivery centers for like online retailers. But I actually think, and this is totally off topic, but I think there's a huge opportunity for us to look at some of these commercial and business spaces that I believe will be abandoned once kind of the current round of leases, kind of reach their end, to actually look into affordable housing solutions, converting those into affordable housing units that are sustainable and healthy and cost-effective to really solve for our, kind of exploding affordable housing challenges across the country. But again, that's a whole other webinar.
No, I actually concur with the path you're heading down. I've wondered myself about commercial real estate and the ramifications that COVID is going to have on offices and the campuses that some of these corporations have and the massive size of them. But you're right, that is a topic for another day. Well, I don't see any other questions, so certainly thank you, Sarah, not just on behalf of myself, but many of the guests were saying thank you notes via the questions box. The insights that you shared with us today were phenomenal, so thank you very much. Thank you also to our wonderful audience. They always show up for us, and we appreciate you doing that, and for asking wonderful questions. And thank you to Panasonic for their generous sponsorship of this webinar. As mentioned at the outset of this webinar, our next webinar will be 1 week from today. On Wednesday, December 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll be joined by Matt Power of Green Builder Media. Many of you are probably very familiar with him. We're going to look at building science as a way to help us solve real market problems. I hope you'll join us right back here next week. Until then, please continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and take care of yourself and your family.